G'day everyone, Craig from People with a Passion, and my special guest today is Laurie Kelly from Brain Friendly Training. How you going, Laurie?
Very good, Craig. Very good indeed.
That's good, mate. Now, you invited me to attend a intensive training workshop in how people actually learn, and it was geared around trainers. It was for trainers to improve themselves in that area. So, do you want to speak to what you actually do and what brain friendly training is actually about?
Basically, there's just so much out there now about the brain and how the brain works and how individuals learn. And what I really want to do is inspire trainers and educators and teachers into understanding a little bit about this neuroscience and how that influences their delivery of their subject matter and how they train, so that they can really engage students, both high school, primary high school, and adult students in the workplace, so that they can really get back that joy and success of learning. I think everyone is innately a learner from right when we were very beginning, when we first learned to talk and walk, and that's been dragged out of a lot of us by some of the old systems. And I think it's just really great to understand a little bit about our individual brains, and particularly how then we cater for those different learners in their room, and how the learners can help themselves learn.
One of the things in your training that you mentioned was the knowledge trap, and it's interesting you raise how we learn, because as kids we have this thing around discovery. As babies and as young people, we go and discover and journey, and we make mistakes and we put things in our mouths, and we get older and we learn by often the hard way, school of hard knocks. And you just identified that changes, that there are changes in the way we learn over time, and we start to be more limiting in our approach. And I guess brain-friendly training is unlocking some of those things that we probably locked up that were there naturally as kids, potentially.
Yeah, and look, I think it's a school system that we've been through for a lot of us. And I really don't want to knock teachers, because they're under enormous stress at the moment and pressure, what they've got to do. But it's really much the whole system, and it caters for a certain sort of kid and a certain sort of learning. But there's a whole range of kids that have been left behind, and they come through with a belief that they can't learn, and that's not for them. My feeling is that all they need to do is be shown how to learn and how they take information in. It can simply be, if you've got a kid who's a very, what we call a kinesthetic right brain kid, who's a whole body moving kid, but they've got lots of creativity, lots of ideas, they find it very difficult in traditional schooling just to sit down and be quiet. Simple things like colour can be so powerful for them, just to be able to use colour with their homework and to be able to draw. So I think it's just being a lot more flexible in how we deliver, and how we give options for kids to learn. But also being aware that, the school isn't the only place kids learn. They learn through their sport. They learn through their interaction with each other. And they learn through the workplace too, which I think is just a wonderful place for them to learn. But it's being successful learners that I want them to be.
So you mentioned kinesthetic learners. You brought up that there are three other types. Do you want to just explain those quickly for
there's
audience?
what we call the visual. Now, when we say learners, they're perceptual styles, right? And we all use all four, but we have a strength. So some people are more strongly visual learners. They've got to see something before so they can understand it. They've got to see it drawn, or they can draw it themselves. So they're very much using their eyes. Auditory learners are people who learn by listening. Kinesthetic learners, they're the ones who have to move their whole bodies. They have to do it. Where tactile learners are the fiddlers. Now, what that basically means is, if you go to a Kmart or an electrical store on a hot day and you go in and say, I want that fan, the shop assistant just doesn't give you the fan and say, take it away. They'll go at the back and they'll get you a cardboard box, and you say to yourself, this is a flat pack. I've got to put this together. Now, a visual learner, provided there's a diagram there, or a mud map of it, or a picture of it, they'll eventually, if they can see it, they'll say, oh, that's number C there, that must be the D, the bolt that goes on to C. So they'll get it eventually. Auditory learner, they've got to listen, so they've got to have somebody who talks them through it or explains to them what to do. If they haven't got anyone explaining to them what to do, they'll actually talk themselves as they put that fan together, because that's what auditory people do. Kinesthetic tactile, they'll just hop in and they'll do it. till they completely muck it up.
Yeah.
Then they've got to go back and see what they should have done the first time.
Yeah.
Because they're doers.
Yes.
You know? Only then will they go and look at a manual because they just want to have a go at it. So it's important if you're to understand how you learn and how you learn best.
Yes.
Because if you are a visual person, you need to say, give me a mapper, give me a picture of, show me, do a flow chart for me, you know. If you're an auditory, can I explain to you, what does it mean? You've got to talk it through with someone. Auditory learners, they've got to talk, they've got to teach someone else what they've learned. Kinesthetic tactile, well, kinesthetic, they've got to have examples of it. I'm very kinesthetic, so I'll say to you, give me an example of that. What do you mean in practice? As soon as you give me a practical example, I've got it. But I've got to ask for that. And the kinesthetic kids, they'll be moving and they've got to put it in through their body, where in the school they'll be told, sit down, be quiet, don't move. And that's just so hard for those kids. And fiddlers, they're the ones that take the labels off stubby bottles. And they just got to have their hands going to learn. Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting there. I feel like I've known some magician secrets now, sitting in on the intensive workshop. I know what you did there. You just did a conscious convincer.
Yeah.
You explained the idea of fan, which is universal, that we can all understand this concept of flat pack, and to convince people that this is how you learn, you've made them conceptualize how they would put something together, and they've come to probably, if they're listening, they're going, hey, that's me.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's this convincing happening in the way, in your approach of learning. So you know that there's a learning outcome there when you use a conscious convincer.
Yeah, universe, because I've linked it into an example that most people have an experience of putting a flat pack together. It's like I could have said to you, putting a DVD, you get a new DVD at home. There'll always be someone who wants to stick the wire, wants to read the manual first. And there'll be someone who just wants to stick the wires in and see what happens, you know. Yeah. And that's your K and your T. So again, I'm using examples there. Now, this is the reason for that is very much working with the neurons of the brain. Okay, that the brain have patterns of our experience of the past. So if we can link it to some previous experience that people have, that they can see the connection. Oh, yeah, I remember doing that. Then you've got a much better chance of that information actually sticking. And then being able to understand it more quickly.
And you talk about learning outcomes as being a change of state, that a state actually has to occur. Now, some of the methodologies you used in the intensive workshop was symbols, and you drew a Bunsen burner. Do you want to explain that concept of not only why you would be drawing symbols?
Okay. Now, this work comes from Tony Buzan's work in mind mapping, and there's a lot of other research as well. But it's saying that if we're studying, if we can convert what we're studying into some sort of symbolic form, okay, it's much easier for the brain to understand and to hold that information. And so what you're doing, and I used an example of a change of state, and I in the workshop I drew up a Bunsen burner with a beaker on top with a bit of fluid, and I asked people to remember when they were at school in the grade 8 class. I went to the first science class, and they were allowed to light the Bunsen burner off, and then the liquid went from a liquid to a gaseous state. And I use that to kind of explain how we look at change of state, people's mental state and alertness state and attitudinal state. But in the process of the universal, I was hoping people would link back to when they were at high school and think, oh, I remember doing that. So as soon as I got them, I remember doing that, I got them mentally with me. So that's an important thing, is to have your students mentally and attitudinally alert and with you in the room. You can have them physically there, but how do you get them mentally there?
So you talk about different strategies when you first, as an educator, enter a room. You want to have a situation of early engagement, and you want to raise the RAS state.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about RAS? We'll talk about the early engagement stuff, because that's. But let's start with RAS. Okay. What's RAS, and why is that important?
The RAS is the reticular activating system. Now, it's the back part of your brain, a little area there that connects the conscious and the subconscious. Okay. Can I give you an example? You got to go to a car yard and buy yourself a brand new yellow Mazda. You'll drive out in a brand new yellow Mazda, and all of a sudden you're going to see yellow Mazdas like everywhere. You say, oh, that's a car, that's another one, that's another one over there. So all of a sudden, your brain's looking for yellow Mazdas. Now, they've always been there, but all of a sudden you're zeroing in on them. It's where you put your focus. So it's important with learning is that you set your brain up for what you want to look at. Okay, so if I was doing from a textbook, and I can give you an example here of when I was studying with, doing some work with a student nurse. I said to him, like, he had his anatomy book there, and I said, look, it was that thick. And I said, well, he said, I find it really hard to learn from books.
Hmm.
I said, well, first of all, what you do is you go to the back of the chapter, and in the back of the chapter is usually a summary of what you've got to look at. Okay, so that's setting your brain up with what's the important things.
Hmm.
Okay, then you go back and you very quickly flick through your chapter, so you've set the brain up a little bit of what's there. Now that RAS starts to come in then, and it then links into what's the important things is to look for when you're doing that. It's the same thing I would say to anyone who's a student is to look at YouTube. YouTube is the most wonderful resource that you've got out there at the moment. So if you've got a topic now, I'll give you an example here. I worked with a student with, they had to look at the influence of Big Bet in the modern world, I said, right, I said, have a look at, let's see what's on YouTube. Believe it or not, there are 3 YouTube clips on the influence of Macbeth in the modern world. And I just have a look at that. Have a look at those. There's 7-minute clips, but what they've done is they've set your brain up, set the RAS up for what's important then. So when you go to lectures or go to class, you're looking for things there. And it's the same with lectures. You would set yourself up for what you need to look for. If you're a teacher, you'd always make sure that at the beginning of their class you give an overview. These are the things we're going to be looking at today. So you're working with the student's subconscious, and you're saying, look, these are the sorts of things that I want you to focus in on in today's class. Without actually saying it, you've set them up, set the subconscious up to look at that.
And a lot of what you're doing is subconscious. Like I said,
Oh,
I felt
yeah.
like I'm reading a magician's
Yeah.
book because you've exposed a little bit of to me before the audience. Now,
I call it manipulators,
Yes,
masters
you're
of manipulation.
manipulators. Yes.
Getting people in a really resourceful learning state.
so look, there was a whole number of exercises. I think at the end of the day, you gave us 51
Yeah.
things that we could use to engage. Tools, I guess, they're all tools and methodologies.
Yes.
There's some very impressive ones and some extremely simple ones and some things that really wowed us. And certainly one that I would like to speak to now because it's popped into my head, so it must want to come up, is that horse and
Horse
people
and
to know. The whole concept around that we have a knowledge trap, that what we know can actually limit our ability to learn because we can't see beyond what we already know to be real in our mind, and it's not necessarily the case. And you had the whole room stumped, mate.
Yeah. I guess, and that came from the idea of Ebba de Bono's work. And when he's saying that the knowledge trap is that people, the most dangerous statement you could make is the statement, I am right. Because as soon as you say I'm right, you stop your ability to learn. You stop your kind of ability to look at things from a different perspective. And I use the noughts and crosses as an example of that, because most people would have played noughts and crosses in their day, and we all probably would have had a favourite way of playing noughts and crosses. And what I then challenge people to have a look at how many ways you could play noughts and crosses, and there's 362,880 possible ways to play at noughts and crosses.
I think I've only ever played it the once.
Exactly.
I keep following the same process.
We get stuck in our ordinary way.
Yeah.
That's the thing with learning, is that we get stuck in the way we've always done it. I guess it's a key of this brain-friendly training is to have a look at other ways. There's other neuro pathways that you can link into.
Is the RAS open to more learning in the sense of, you said it was a filter system as well, that it is that linked to that concept of a knowledge trap as well, that you need to unleash and sort of ready your brain to get something new? Or?
Yeah, it does. As the educator, it's important that you set people up for what you want them to have a look at. So, and that comes in what we call the WIF and what's in it for them.
This is an evolution for you, and I want to look at where it all started, and I think where you've arrived is extremely interesting, and I think it's something that I indicated to you. It's that I think anyone who is an educator or a trainer of whether it be students of any type, adult, outside of the school system, even basketball or sports coaches, that was my experience. That it's relevant to anyone who's helping others learn. It's relevant and important. Let's go back and have a discussion about how you arrived
at it. Okay.
So, talk us through your history as an educator, but prior to being an educator.
Right. Grade 11 and 12, I was lucky that I had a goal. I wanted to be a teacher. I think I mentioned it before. I believe that any student in grade 11 and 12, the most important thing to help them get through those 2 years is if they've got a goal. if they don't, and I say to kids, what do you want to be? And they say, oh, I'll do anything. That's the hardest thing. And so because they're really, they're not focused. So I was fortunate that I wanted to be a teacher. Okay. I then left school and I thought, well, I'm not really ready yet. And so I went on a journey because I thought then that a teacher really had to have a lot of life experience that they can offer students. I saw myself as a teacher of students, not a teacher of a subject. And so I had something like 19 jobs in total, a whole range of different ones.
What's some of the ones that you can share with us that you had that have a bit of...
Okay, well, I went from, from being a postie to a furniture removalist. I worked as a barman at the Inala Hotel.
What are some of the funnier things as a barman? I'm sure you would have heard a few stories.
Well, I was travelling around Australia and I come back and I thought, well, I just knew a tradesman and a barman could get a job anywhere in Australia. And I thought, well, I'm too old to be a tradesman. I was 22,
Too old.
You might, too old, I thought, well, I'll have to get a job as a barman. I thought, well, where could I work? And I thought, if I worked in Inala Hotel, I could work anywhere. This is 1976, so Inala had a pretty rough reputation in those days. A lot better these days by far. Anyway, I thought, well, I'll get a job there. And it was a great experience. But I do remember one night, it was a Friday night, there was about 200 people in the bar, and there was a fight. And then about half an hour later, one of the guys come back with 2 sticks of gelignite. You have never seen so many people move so fast in all their lives, including me. I'm out of here.
Yeah, I can imagine it would have seen some things that are a bit weird and wonderful in that environment, I'm sure, over the years when you were there.
And then from there, I went to the tax office and then to the YMCA as their cultural affairs director. And I had a little bit of experience in that before that. I used to the student union at the university, and I'm very proud to say that I brought Cheech and Chong to Brisbane in '74. But the YMCA then won a tender to set up a program for unemployed kids back in 1977, and I was asked to head that program up. It was at Windsor. We had 500 students, 500 young people through that year. What really amazed me, they're mainly street kids, and they come from Woodridge to Redcliffe, all over Brisbane. But what amazed me was the number of really, really smart kids who had failed at school and had come through with a really poor image of themselves as a learner. And I thought, there's got to be another way of doing this. So that's when I went and did my dip ed, my professional year. And I thought I'll try and get some skills in that area. But I couldn't get a job outside, so I thought, well, I better get a job. It was very, I mentioned before that it was very, very theoretical year. Complete, total waste of a year, my dip ed. Very theoretical, it wasn't practical, and I really wanted to be practical. I wanted stuff that actually worked with kids. So I thought I'd better get a job in the classroom. And then I got a job in the classroom, and my principal said, well, you've got a Bachelor of Arts. He said, you can be our art teacher. And I said, if you see my artwork, I'm an expert in stress management.
I've seen your artwork. I've seen the symbols on the board.
So then I set up, about 18 months later, I was transferred in the central office to set up a whole heap of programs and fund programs for what they call at-risk kids. How do schools prepare kids for the workplace? And so I was fortunate there, and I lasted there 3 years as a consultant, and then went back to the schools and set up a program myself for kids who just weren't coping. And we identified them at the end of year 8, and we did a program in year 9 and 10 with them. And I had them for probably 6 of their 10 subjects.
Okay.
And we focused it around what we call citizenship education. So the kids only came to school for 3.5 days a week. Now, this is back in 1986, 87. Pretty new stuff. But they were in grade 9 and 10, they were doing community service, they had to have a part-time job. Really kind of pushed them into that whole area of realism. We did a 10-day outward bound with them.
Okay.
Where they had to kind of carry all their food with them for 10 days, and if they ran out of food, bad luck.
Yeah.
So it was really...
So that's real life experience, real
absolutely.
learning, different ways of learning, and that's one of the ways we learn is to and I mentioned it earlier about we learn as kids,
doing.
by doing, and that's one of the ways that these kids do actually learn. You say they're bright, but there's kids there that the system seems geared for visual and auditory learners. Those that need to see things or hear things.
And very analytical learners. It's set up for a particular sort of kid, and it leaves a lot of kids behind.
So you talk about on your videos and on your websites and webinars, the left and right hand side of the brain, and how important that is to feed both sides, because that's where the boredom actually occurs for one or the other.
It is.
You've got to cater, because we're all the VA-KT. We all have attributes of it. There is a dominant attribute of how we learn.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, your whole approach is, if you cater for an individual and all those features to an individual, you're going to cater to everyone in the room.
And you're going to help the individual as well, because you hit the whole four.
Yes.
I would also say the same thing with left and right brain. And we're talking now about the plasticity of the brain. It's not just saying we're all left or we're all right. We use both.
Yes.
But it's knowing ideas, like, and particularly for the learner, if the learner knows how they learn.
Yes.
Like, I'm kinesthetic, so I have to have practical examples. So if I'm missing something, I'll say, give me a practical example. What's it mean in practice? As soon as they've said that, I've got it.
Yes.
It's the same with left and right brain. You know, if I'm a right brain person, they're very creative. They've got lots of ideas, but they find it very hard to focus on a particular subject or a particular idea, because their mind's all over the place. So things like colour can be powerful for those kids. It can really help them kind of focus in for those right brain. Getting home at night, doing your homework with really good Technicolor pens. Using your music. Like, a lot of times we hear people say, oh, how can you study with music on? A lot of people can.
There are studies that show that white noise or music or background noise increases concentration.
For some people.
And it helps some people sleep.
Yeah.
So it has a soothing effect, and it's to do with it's a subconscious focus. It's not conscious. Even though the noise is there, it's almost like it has a cancelling out effect or a filtering effect.
Yes, very much so. For some people. Some people don't need it.
Which one of your methodologies is in the room when you're having people engage in conversation or group work, you'll play music. And you said you do that when they come into a room so that there's noise. So it's often that's an early engager.
Yep. That's I think my big thing was that particularly with adults, if you're doing training with adults or education adults, when they come into the training room, the room's got to say, this could be different. Because people come in with these preconception ideas, like that knowledge trap before. I'm right, how can you teach me? I've been at this game for 15 years. What am I going to learn today? I've been sent by my boss.
They're expecting an experience that they've had a million times before, and they're just going, oh, this is going to be the same. We're just going to be, someone's going to stand up in front of us and they're just going to tell us everything, and I could read it in a book.
Yeah, well, you ask a tradie how many induction programs they've been to. You know, they can have 20, 30, 40 induction programs, you know. So when they come in, the room's got to say, this could be different. Oh, something's going on here.
And that sparks the RAS as well.
Sparks the RAS, sparks a sense of curiosity.
Yes.
And it gets people mentally in the room. So
yes.
They're mentally ready to learn.
And music can help do that.
Oh, for sure. But when they first move in, have some good music going. So it just breaks the atmosphere up a bit for people.
And then when you were having us as an exercise in the intensive workshop, you actually at times would play music, and you said what you do to drive engagement and interaction with people, and we don't even notice it, is sometimes you'll start the music and you notice there's not much interaction, so you start to lift the volume of it.
Volume up, yep.
And you use the sound as an anchor to have them stop. So instead of saying, okay, everyone stop, you just turn the music off, and it's like all the music stops and all the attention goes back to you. Right. And it's almost like training a dog to roll over. That's the magic of it. It's unique to see how those techniques work. And they engage people because it's, again, like you say, a different learning experience. Like, what classroom do you walk into where you've got a teacher playing, in your case, it was 60 music. You had the room questioning the playlist. It just probably could be a good thing or bad thing. But, but the point being is the music was used as a means of keeping us active and involved and engaged.
But what you've just done is a classic example of what I was on about. I wanted you to experience what I was talking about so you could teach others.
Yes.
Well,
a conscious
you have
convincer.
learned it. From what people have just heard, what you've just explained, You've learnt that by doing it, but it's come to your mind straight away. This is what he did. This is what we experienced.
But that's a conscious convincer because when you see, but you were doing it, and then later on you were explaining
the theory behind it.
And me being the inquisitive mind kept asking questions and why the music?
I told you to shut up at one stage.
You're like I'm getting to that. But it's like I'm not letting the cat out of the bag on the music just yet. Everyone else was just complaining about the playlist. So I'm going, there's something behind this playing music while we're in
my playlist wasn't that bad.
No, it wasn't at all. It wasn't at all. I don't want to scare anyone off from any of your workshops. It was actually quite good. We just had to pick on you for something. It was like you had us doing some things that were challenging us, and I think a few of us.
Buddy Holly and that.
It's interesting because the knowledge trap came up multiple times. You had us do things. Where we were asked to do activities where we used what we assumed to be correct.
Yes.
There was a case of a safety...
Workplace health and safety.
Workplace health and safety where you gave us a whole scenario of cards and said, hey, put these in the order of what you think happened. And I won't go into it because if you ever do one of the workshops, I don't want to be a spoiler here, but you had, again, the whole room bamboozled by the way our knowledge... limits our ability to see
possibilities.
That's it. And I think that's what learning's about and then again, conscious convincer, when you actually explain it, we're all like, it's like an epiphany.
Yes.
And that's what you want us to have. That is the learning experience. That's the change of state again.
Absolutely. That's a wow state then. You think, oh, yeah. So in the change of state, for those who are educators, you want to get people really curious. So there's 5 key states, for learning. Get them curious. Put them through an experience and say, oh, wow. Okay, that wow state, and then, got it. And then the challenge, and that's a bit of cortisol and adrenaline. So all of these states actually work with chemicals of the brain, okay, so to kind of get the brain engaged and get people ready to learn and open to learning. And that's what we did. A lot of those engagement and the early engagement activities were the same sort of thing.
So there's also a concept you introduced the other day of a flipped classroom. Do you want to explain this concept of a flipped classroom?
Okay, yeah. And that will link into what I was talking about before about Macbeth in the modern world. This began in the United States about 10 years ago, where they were finding that kids in this high school weren't doing homework. Surprise, surprise. And they thought, well, if we take away the fact that they're just lazy, why else wouldn't kids do homework? And they thought, well, traditionally what happens in school, we teach kids a concept and we say, go home and practice it at night, okay? But if the kids don't understand the concept during the day, how the hell can they practice it at night?
Yeah.
So what they thought, let's flip it. So our homework now is that they watch a 5 to 10 minute little video clip which put on the school YouTube channel. Let's say if I'm teaching simultaneous equations. So I'll do a little presentation on a YouTube clip on how to understand a simultaneous equation. I'll load that up and the kids' homework is to go and watch that video clip on simultaneous equations, come to school the next day. It's a 10-minute homework exercise, come to school the next day and they actually practice simultaneous based on the theory they've learnt the night before.
Yeah.
Okay? And this is having absolutely revolutionary results, and
is that because that's actually the methodology you're teaching us to get that RAS state fired up, because now the curiosity's there and you're not being asked to know it. You're being shown that big picture. And then you go back to class knowing this is coming, and now you're interested in saying, well, how do I arrive at that state?
And see, if I was teaching auto mechanics, apprentice mechanics, I'd do something with a starter motor, get a little video clip on how to put the starter motor together. I was working with consultant doctors and how to train their junior doctors. And I said, well, why don't you give them a YouTube channel, Dr. Google, to watch? Well, red rag to Dr. Google. I said, that's perfect. If they can then look at, okay, say, what has been superseded from this YouTube clip? What do we do differently now? Makes us superseded. And so you've got them looking at the YouTube with their brain thinking to focus in on what was done then, what are we doing now, and why are we doing that now? So when they come to class next day, they've got something that they can actually contribute to the conversation. So I would do the same thing if I was teaching basketball. I'd say, okay, here's a little clip. I want you, before the training next week, I want you to have a look at this clip. Now, most students have got little smartphones. They can look it up. They'll look it up on their bus coming in. Even if they're late, they can at least look it up on their phone. and watch that. So when they come to training, you've already set them up with some of the theory, so it gives you more time then to work on the concept, the practice of it. That's taking off, really becoming a lot more popular throughout the education, both at schools and in the adult education area.
You had us move in groups quite often, so your approach to school classroom was a cafe style,
Yep.
where we literally were in groups of no more than 3 or 4 individuals and interacting, and then you use some methodologies of cards and dots and things to have us all move around the room, and just said, if you've got a blue dot on your card, on your name, go find the people with the other blue dots and sit at that table, or you gave out kings, jacks, queens and
playing cards,
and we're basically mixing us up into groups. And you also did something that was different than a normal think tank. You did a round table, and that was where we moved information across tables and had people contribute to it, and basically said, don't add to what's there, don't repeat what's there. And we had many more results than you went through.
93 ideas generated in 10 minutes.
Yes. Yeah. As opposed to if you just had the situation where you're just asking for people to bark out ideas, it was a far more, the outcome and the learning outcome was far superior. But then you threw another thing at us and said, I want you to ask this question: what are people using these days? Mobile phones. Work out what you can possibly do on a mobile phone. And that was related to the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile. And you basically said, now, how could you use a mobile phone? And that we went through one exercise, and then you said, now let's add this as a tool, and what can you do? And it just blew the number out of the water.
Out of water. Because there's just so much out there.
So,
and a lot of teachers and educators are really find it very distracting, students using mobile phones. Well, I'm saying, well, look, use it as a tool. There's so much out there. It's not going to become exclusive.
And it's beyond YouTube too. People just think, oh, show a video. But we had so many ideas as a group.
Yeah.
That were just
apps that
were just so different. So something you did during the intensive training was you were using charts. And do you want to talk about why you choose to use charts?
Yeah, okay. And probably surprise yourself and everyone else that I didn't use PowerPoint.
Well, we walked into the room and there was a projector on, but you actually asked the hosts of the venue to actually turn it off. You said, I'm not going to be using that.
Yeah. And look, I'm not anti-PowerPoint, please. I'm not but PowerPoint is just used to death by so many people. It's used as a teaching tool where it's a great resource, but that's all it is. It's a resource. And PowerPoint can be used so well, but it can be used very, very badly. And what I would suggest to people, if they're going to use PowerPoint, is that they look at the whole idea of pictures again, symbols. Picture paints 1,000 words. So use a picture. Use the brain can take in 5 things plus or minus 2. So you would never have more than 5 words or ideas on your PowerPoint slide. And so I then I want to train people to use the old-fashioned whiteboards, charts, and chart stands.
And you were using paper and you're flipping it over.
Yeah.
You had a little methodology there that we didn't believe. Again, another conscious convincer. You said, we're thinking, what a genius this guy is. He knows everything he's talking about. And then you threw in there, by the way, everything on this paper I've already prepared yesterday in pencil.
You're giving away the magic.
You can't see the pencil, but it's there. And then you got people later coming up and having a look. Yeah, the pencil's there. That's a preparation tool, but that way it keeps you on track as an educator to get a flow going, which we were just intrigued. It's like watching a magician at work. Yeah. Let's face it. But I tell you what we'll do with that is you do go through the overview of that intensive course up on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think if people want to see this whole concept of colour, use
symbols,
of
journey,
symbols, all that, I'll link that in our description so that they can see actually what we're talking about here.
Sure, that'd be great. So why I use charts? Can we go back to that one? You know, I used a lot of charts around the room, and so that information, as I do a topic, you would have noticed as I talked about something, I always did a little bit of a visual, a bit of a cartoon. Now, I'm not as you would have seen, I'm not a natural artist.
But you taught art at school.
Craft, mate, craft.
Craft, yeah.
Okay. But I attended a workshop in London a couple of years ago by a guy called Graham Shaw. And he's got a great TED talk on how to draw to remember more.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very, very simple way of getting you into drawing. But when I taught something with you guys, I actually always did something on the chart stand, so that you were taking visually, you're seeing it, auditory, you were hearing me, you weren't just listening to me. And I also explained that and gave you examples as I did that. Now, by having the charts around, then I could do what was called, at the end of the day, a refresher walk. So that I got you what was called a philosopher's walk, where I actually got you in pairs to walk around and to explain to each other what each of those charts were about. Had I had you the next day or the next week, I'd have had those charts up and said, right, let's start again by a visual walk around. So you're actually getting around, and you would have seen people talking, seeing it visually, looking at it, talking about it, touching it, some people, and walking. So you had the whole VAKT working.
And that for
Did it
me
work
was,
well?
it did work well, and I thought it was a nice finisher for the
Yeah.
day. Every chart you'd drawn in that day, as we were drawing them, your assistant was placing them up along the walls, and you said, if don't write this stuff down if you don't want to. Go and take a photo.
Yeah.
Use your phone.
Yeah.
It's a tool. And you were having us take photo. Well, those that wanted to, you didn't.
Yeah.
Again, you're not. By getting us up and walking around, you're pleasing the kinesthetics.
Yeah.
By letting them play with their phone and
Yeah.
the tactiles. So they're engaged in the learning process.
Yeah.
The philosopher's walk for me topped off the day, and it was really good. But it wasn't the end of the day, because you sat us down, then you talked about revision and retention.
Yes.
And how for us to actually get real learning outcomes, how we have to revise those outcomes. And you just touched on it with saying, you come in another 3 days or whatever, you're going to be doing a revision of that. You're going to walk around again.
Yes.
So do you want to talk to revision and retention?
Okay. Yeah. What normally happens with retention, we take information in, we peak at about 24 hours of that retention, and then as the day's gone, if we don't revise it, our retention drops right off. And I use the example of the 17-year-old driver's theory test. And for anyone who's watching, if I was to ask you to resit your 17-year-old driver's theory test here now, where would your knowledge level be? Would it be still up around the 90%, or kind of like right down? And most people say it's right down, which it is, because we have so much information come in.
Yeah.
So if you've got information that you need to keep at that high 85 to 90% retention, there are key times that you need to intervene.
Yes.
And that's within 10 minutes to 6 hours after first learning something. And then a day later, a week later, a month later, 3 months later, 6 months later. You've got to put in your diary to go back and revisit those. 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. You will be utterly amazed how much you've retained in that process of doing that.
And one of those processes that help you within that first 10 minutes, after you'd give us examples and things, you basically say, come up with an example, write two examples, write them down yourself, share them with someone else, and then share them as a whole. And meaning as the whole group, you'd ask volunteers, do you want to share? And that process is a whole concept of reinforcement just there. So that's retention. That's the first 10 minutes of learning something. You then engage them in that learning process to then it was the 1-2 whole method you call it.
Yes. Now, that there is, it's for reflective and impulsive learners. Like, I'm a reflective learner. I'll come away from a conversation and think, I wish I'd said that. I'm not quick on my feet. They're impulsive learners. They think with their mouths. They're out there.
I think
not always connect to their brains, by the way.
Yeah, that's probably me.
But
I feel like my thoughts are attached to my mouth. I'm a talker, so my thoughts are attached to my mouth. And then I'm the opposite. Like you go, gee, I wish I'd said that. It's like, gee, I wish I hadn't have said that. It's the opposite.
So what I encourage people is how to engage people like myself who are reflectors. Is you say, look, can everyone just whack their own thought down here for you got 3 seconds, 5 seconds. Put your own thoughts down first. Then I want you to, or anything you want clarified, or questions you want to ask and clarified. Then share with the person next to you. So that's the 1-2. And then they can practice by sharing it and getting that confidence of at least airing their ideas with somebody else, and then we share it with the whole class if you want to.
And you hit just then 2 words that come up in the thing.
Right.
I say, I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Clarification and questions. And this is about anxiety.
Yeah.
Just use of different words and the power of words. This comes back to, you are an NLP practitioner too, neuro-linguistic practitioner. So you're big on the use of words have a impact at the subconscious level. And that whole concept of saying, are there anyone want clarification? Reduces the anxiety for an individual who otherwise, because questions are geared around something being right or wrong.
Yeah. And like most adults don't ask questions. You can say to a group, have you got any questions? And no questions is a silly question.
I'm pretty sure you actually asked that and no one put their hands up.
Yeah. Then I'd say to them, okay, and I picked this concept up from an English as a second language school. They said their overseas students didn't like asking questions, but didn't mind asking for things to be clarified. I thought, how clever is that? Because if I've got to ask a question, I'm a bit dumb, I don't know.
Yes.
But if I want something to be clarified, well, I know 93% of it. There's just a little bit I need clarifying. So it reduces that anxiety, it reduces our subconsciousness, and it allows that person then to be able to share what they will need clarification on. So if you are an educator or trainer, can I encourage you to, when you're saying if you've got any questions, tag on or anything you'd like clarified. It just reduces that anxiety for your learner and lets them be involved, a lot more engaged, a lot more.
If you really are engaging your learners, you want that experience where you see the change of state. Yes. You see that there is real learning happening. It's not just because the traditional approach, and let's face it, the majority of my experiences in even what we would have arrived at your intensive training course thinking, this is going to be another one of these classroom scenarios with a guy talking at us for 9 hours. Now, actually, what you did that was very good, and you discussed it in the session, was anxiety levels.
Yeah.
You reduced anxiety when we first arrived by having a couple of early engages.
Yeah.
You also talked about what the anxiety levels are around. So you want to speak to this concept of anxiety?
Yeah. Okay. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about anxiety. A lot of people say, you hear people saying that anxiety is a mental disorder. It's not a mental disorder, anxiety. It is a physiological reaction of your body to stressful situations. It's an overflow of cortisol and adrenaline, basically, which floods the brain. Now you have what we call the triune brain, okay? And you have the reptilian brain, which is a fight-flight brain. You have your mammal brain, which is your emotional brain, and you have your neocortex, which is your outer brain, your clear-thinking human brain. And when people are anxious, the blood and oxygen are with the mammal and the reptilian brain, but not getting to our clear-thinking brain. So when we're anxious, our body's in that alert mode, kind of,
it's a fight or flight,
and it's keeping basic organs going. Okay, but it's not allowing us to do clear thinking. So I believe it's essential as us as educators is that we try our very best to put our students in a resourceful state that reduces anxiety. So that cortisol and adrenaline are down, and that they're open to being able to learn. And part of that is the room atmosphere. It's part of giving them definitely success. They can feel as if they're achieving. Okay, making it relevant for them, so they're actually mentally in the room. They're not thinking about their problems outside, but you're talking physically and mentally in the room.
So you talk and spoke about that concept of being physically in the room, and you said that to reduce anxiety levels, you did some mindfulness exercises, which were good. But I think that's probably something they need to sign up to your webinar for, because I don't want to be jumping around the room doing them. But you pretty much talked about that where anxiety levels mainly caused by are actually from our understanding of the past and our concern for the future. And what you've got to do is narrow that to bring them into the now, which is you just referred to bringing them into the room. And what is happening now, and just forgetting those other aspects.
Now, that's about what the latest research is saying, that if you want to bring cortisol and adrenaline down naturally, you've got to bring people back into the present. That's what the concept of mindfulness is about, and meditation. It's so powerful now, the research is saying this. And part of that is getting people into their bodies, out of their heads into their bodies. So they're not thinking about the past, or even simple things like that, do we leave the kids at home, or the traffic jam, or a blue I had on the bus, or the future, but you actually get them in them now. Now, one of the ways of doing that is to be able to train yourself to actually be in your body. And that's about awareness of breathing. And a whole range of stuff.
You do a little exercise when you wake up in the morning every day. It's a ritual for you where you go outside, step on the veranda, and you go and look at a leaf moving or something like that. Do you want to explain the process around it?
That's a simple thing. Like often people hear meditation and think, oh, I haven't got time to do half hour, 3 hours of meditation a day. It's not that. It's being present. So I would suggest people to start by just going out in the veranda, on the balcony at home, and just looking, maybe choosing something in nature, maybe a little flower, maybe a branch, maybe a tree, and just focusing on that leaf. No more than 20 seconds. All you do is just, you're not judging, you're just looking and just watching it. The leaf might be just moving very, very slowly. It might be breathing in the wind. Okay, but what you're doing is you're just watching that, and if there's no wind, it might be just absolutely still. But you'll see little ants come through, or a little bug. But what you're doing is by visually, you're being present in the moment. Just observing. Then you're hearing. You're just listening for the sounds. It may be traffic, it may be dogs barking, wind in the trees, maybe silence. But for that 20 seconds, then you're just being aware of what you can hear. And then kinesthetically, how you feel. So you're just aware of your body and take one with your hands. But it's no more than 20 seconds each one, because that just actually brings you back in and really aware of your breathing. And that's the key.
And they were the exercises that we did. You showed some, and you said it takes all of 2 minutes. That's a physiological alteration, or again an altered state, to get people's anxiety levels down in a class or learning environment. Because let's face it, the ones who are visual and auditory learners, they're probably cool with it because they know what's coming and that suits them. But it's the ones who don't really want to be there, and their anxiety around not walking out of classroom knowing there's no learning that's happening for them. But if they use all your methodologies, I'm sure that will change very quickly. I think people are just going to have to go up and have a look at what brain-friendly training actually does, and what you've developed over 30 years, 3 decades, and you're a constant learner, so you're constantly looking for things to improve the outcomes of
for learners.
It's even though the training's geared for more primarily for trainers to engage their learners, it is a platform where the learners are the beneficiaries more so.
Yeah, look, I think if we can empower learners in how to learn, we've given them an enormous gift.
Look, we could talk about this all day. I know that. I think I've probably covered 10 or 15 techniques you introduced to us on the intensive course. But look, there's 51 and more. But if you're interested in connecting with Laurie Kelly of Brain Friendly Training, then I'll put the information in the description on the video, and make sure you go and check out his website. But thanks for your time, Laurie.
Craig, thank you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, and just to share with people, if there's get to incite people again about the joy of learning.
Excellent, mate.
And we can all do it. Just knowing how we do it. That's the key.
Okay, thanks, mate.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for taking time to watch this video. If you enjoyed what you saw, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you smash that subscribe button and also hit the bell button to get notified when new interviews are uploaded. Once again, thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime. Catch you later.